From the East Texas Sports Network studios, powered by Texas Dairy Queen, a tradition of excellence, the ETSN podcast, where Clint Buckley and Mike Graham offer their, well, they just talk. It's the lowdown on everything high school football in East Texas. And now, Clint Buckley and Mike Graham.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Week 5 edition of the ETSN.fm podcast. I'm Clint Buckley, and I'm joined, as always, by Mike Graham. What's up, Mike?
Hey, happy to be here. It's Week 5. Things are getting pretty serious in a lot of districts. We've got 11-6A already 2 games into it. It's getting exciting. The 5As get active, or 16 5A gets active this weekend, and a couple of 4A districts, too.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun as most teams will begin district play. All the districts that have more than 6 teams in that will be in district play this week. Is it just me, or does it seem like we have more undefeated teams at this point of the season than we normally do? We have 18 of them.
Yeah, it definitely does. And if that's not the case, we've got some teams that are really performing very well and starting to gain notoriety across the state. I'm thinking particularly in 4A and 3A.
Well, we'll start with the one 5A team that we have that's undefeated. That's Texas High. They're currently ranked in the state in the 5A poll. They have a dominant non-district. They really haven't been tested so far through the first 4 weeks. They opened 16 5A play against Marshall, and those were our 2 District 16 5A preseason favorites. Yeah,
a lot of things have changed. Marshall really struggled for 3 games. Of course, they got a 40-0 win against Corsicana.
Yep.
And while Corsicana is winless, that was a really big win for them, and they've played a very tough schedule, and Texas High played 4As or schools the size of 4As in Arkansas High from just across the border, plus Dallas, Bishop Lynch. I think these 2 teams might just meet in the middle, and you might get a good game. Marshall is battle-hardened, and Texas High hasn't really played a team that can throw as much depth at them as Marshall can.
Yeah, for our sake, I hope it's a good game, because I think Marshall may be the only hope of knocking off Texas High, or at least being competitive with Texas High in that district. If Texas High rolls past Marshall, then I think you're looking at a case of Texas High and everybody else in that district. So hopefully we see some competitive football in Marshall tomorrow night. On to Class 4A, we've got 5 undefeated teams in 4A, starting with Van. They continued their strong start last week by knocking off previously unbeaten Palestine 38-21. It was competitive, 24-21 at halftime, and then Van kind of pulled away in the second half. Exactly.
We've talked about Van a lot on this program, and they continue to impress, and it's going to be fun watching them in district. We had them picked 3rd, but they're looking pretty good right now and pretty dangerous, not just within the region, but within Region 2 at large in 4A D1.
We've got usual suspects next. We got Henderson and Carthage. Henderson is outscoring opponents by an average of 35 points per game. Really dominant. I think their closest game they've had this year is decided by like 27 points or something like that. Carthage saw them last week take care of Gilmer at home, a very impressive performance. Canton, they're 4-0. The schedule may not, be as strong as they've played in recent years, but I tell you what, they're taking care of business, and Hunter Moore's off to a pretty good start passing the ball.
That's right. I think they tapered down a little bit in non-district play, and that's good for them. Build their confidence up. The district is going to be a little bit easier for them, I think, this year than in past years. You remove teams like Gilmer from it and replace them
Bullard,
with a couple of middle-of-the-road Dallas teams and Wills Point, which has kind of struggled to this point. I think that the schedule lined up perfectly for what they're trying to accomplish in district, and they can worry about a talent level increase in the playoffs.
And then last but not least in Class 4A, Gladewater, and they've been doing it old school, running game and defense. That's what they've been known for the last several years, and they're continuing with that this season. Last week against Chapel Hill, they hold the Bulldogs to minus 43 yards of offense.
That's right, and when you do the stats, it tells the same story. They just lots of tackles for negative yardage. Trench play has never been a bad thing at Gladewater, and this year it's pretty good as well.
We are especially deep at the Class 3A level. I don't know if you all had a chance to take a look at the State Associated Press poll earlier this week, but half of the AP Class 3A top 10 is from East Texas. 5 teams are currently ranked in the top 10 in the state. And we start with White Oak. They're averaging almost 49 points per game. They are just rolling through the competition so far. They have a big game this week, which we'll talk about later, but White Oak is off to a strong start. Malakoff, in a similar vein, is really not had any difficulty in their non-district schedule. They've blown out a couple of 4A teams in non-district, Bullard and Rusk, and they took care of a pretty good TAPS team last week in Tyler Grace, I believe 46-14. They start district play this week, as does Eustis, which is also in 9-3A Division I. They're giving up only 7 points per game. We don't really know quite what to make of Eustis yet because they haven't really played a team that's that we figure to be really strong once the season goes on. But we'll get a good idea of what Eustis has once district play starts. Harmony, yet to be in a close game. They're averaging almost 56 points per game.
Yeah, I've seen Harmony once before against Wascom, and that was a massacre of the two-time defending state champions. And while Wascom had to reload their offense, you can just tell that this Harmony team is well built, and it's been a 2-year process to get this team to where it is. So many 3-year starters on this team, and really exciting game against White Oak this week that we'll get into. Yep,
and then you look. There's a trio of teams not named, and none of them are named ARP and Wascom that are undefeated out of 9 3A Division II. We're talking about Beckville, West Rusk, and Elysian Fields. Beckville so far has been carried by their quarterback, Trey Lindsay. He's kind of done everything for him this year, both through the air and on the ground. West Rusk, a lot of people thought they might have taken a step back this season after graduating so many key players. They're 4-0, and Elysian Fields is 4-0 as well. And really the key for them has been the return of Logan Hughes, who spent last season at Wascom. He has returned to Elysian Fields, has been their quarterback, and he has formed a deadly combination with his wide receiver, Dylan Parker, who is one of the top wide receivers in the area. So that ought to be a great district to watch. Those three teams come into district play 4-0. You've got ARP at 3-1. Wascom, of course, has the pedigree, the two-time defending state champions. That's going to be a really fun district to watch. I can't wait for that one to get going.
Should be a lot of fun. I'm really impressed with West Rusk. Not only are they running the ball well, which they did last year, they're throwing the ball pretty well too. Kevin Jones at receiver, who's also a safety, has returned to form. He's almost leading the area in interceptions. He did last season along with Colin Hurt from Gilmer. He's got 3 to 2 guys that have 4 in the area, which is the best. And I think he's got about 400 receiving yards now. So that's a new dimension that we didn't really see from the West Rusk offense last season. And
then continuing on into Class 3A, we got Crockett and Newton, 2 teams that are in the same district that will be seeing each other in the not-too-distant future. Crockett, no Case Robinson, no A.J. Phillips, no problem so far. Case Robinson is now the quarterback at Lamar. A.J. Phillips, who had a big 1,500-yard receiving season a season ago, they're both gone. Crockett's getting it done with defense. Newton has kind of a new-look offense at its arsenal this season with quarterback Brock Barbay. In the past, Newton has been mainly a run-oriented team, but they've opened it up a little bit this season with Barbay at quarterback. They look very strong. They're ranked number 2 in the state in Class 3A. That the highest-ranked team we have in East Texas right now is Newton. So looking very strong in 3A. And I tell you what, if you had to pin me down and pick a classification where I think East Texas has the best chance of getting to Arlington and for the state championships in December, I think it's Class 3A.
That's right. And Newton, this is a really young team, too. This might be their worst team in a 3-year span that starts this year. So watch out.
And then we move on down to Class A, Carlisle and Tenaha. Carlisle has been doing this for a while. They have really come out of the gate strong. They're outscoring teams by an average of over 36 points per game. Tenaha is 4-0, no surprise. But how about this? 3 shutouts in the 4 games they've played so far. That's impressive.
Yeah, just rolling teams and only 12 points given up. And
yep,
I mean that's it's not looking good for the district.
No, it's not.
They're in, and that district does not appreciate having Tenaha in it ever.
No,
anyway.
No, I wouldn't either. And then finally, our last undefeated team in East Texas comes from TAPS, and that's Brook Hill. They begin TAPS Division II district play this week against All Saints, which is won back-to-back games. So All Saints, after starting off 0-2, is 2-2 now, and feeling pretty good about themselves going on against Brook Hill. They're 4-0. So we're going to be. It's going to be an interesting race, I think, in TAPS.
Yeah, Brook Hill really changed up its offense over the offseason when it hired Scott Ryle from Parrish County in Georgia. And they're almost a run-oriented offense now, and they're doing really well with it. And I think that probably throws off some of their classic opponents a little bit.
And so we get to this point of the season where most of the teams now are going to be involved in district play. District play continues this week for 11-6A. Longview faces Tyler Lee on the road, while John Tyler goes to North Mesquite. And then we also have 10 other districts that will begin district play this week. headlined by 12-6A. That's the district with Lufkin. 16-5A begins as well. Our two big 4A districts, 8-4A-D1, 9-4A-D1 begin. And so many other intriguing districts are about to start this week. The first game I want to talk about this week is a district game, John Tyler against North Mesquite. You saw John Tyler last week against Rockwall. They were in control for most of that game, and then what happened?
That's right. They let Sam Crawford loose, and Crawford was a guy that had averaged about 100 receiving yards through the first three games. And in the second half alone, Crawford got 171 yards, which was crazy because he only had 29 yards in the first half. And he was just the wild card in that game and got them back into it. And ultimately, they score a touchdown to go down 58-57 before the PAT attempt. They go for two, get it. And John Tyler has a return drive that was plagued by penalties, even though they converted fourth down a couple of times on it. And that's just the way it ended.
You know what I think hurts the most, this loss for John Tyler, aside from it being the district opener and them getting out of the gate 0-1, Bryson Smith, I mean, he had an incredible performance, 614 total yards. I think he accounted for 6 of the touchdowns, but it wasn't enough in the end. They couldn't find a way to win at home. Just a game that they probably, expected to win, opening up the way they did, 3-0, and to let it slip away like that can have a negative effect moving forward. And now for John Tyler, this week against North Mesquite on the road, this is a big game because I don't think John Tyler can afford in this district to start off 0-2.
Yeah, you're right. John Tyler's been in strange situations like this before, but it's certainly not where you want to start the district, especially when you think you're the best team in it, and they very well might be the best team in this district talent-wise.
Yeah, and North Mesquite, they're coming off a district win over Mesquite, 28-25 last week, so North Mesquite comes in feeling good about themselves. They're at home at Hanby Stadium against John Tyler. This is a tricky game for John Tyler, and we'll see exactly what this team is made of. If after that tough loss, you hate for it to have a continuing effect the next week. So it's going to be important to see how John Tyler begins this week, because I think if it starts off bad for them in this game against North Mesquite, the game might get away from them because North Mesquite is pretty good. They were a playoff team last year. I think they went 3 rounds deep in the playoffs. So North Mesquite is no slouch, and I don't think very many teams in this district are kind of pushovers. So you're going to have to come to play every week, and that was a big loss last week that they suffered, and they're going to have to rebound in a hurry if they want to kind of get back into district contention. We mentioned it earlier, Texas High and Marshall. We circled these two teams as the preseason favorites in 16-5A. Texas High has been brilliant all season long. They've really fed off their quarterback-receiver combination of Cade Pearson and Quan Hampton. Their defense played really well last week. They shut out Kilgore 44-0. Marshall had a shutout of its own last week. We mentioned 40-0 over Corsicana, finally getting into the win column after a really brutal 0-3 start to the season. I think Texas High is a favorite coming into this game, but it's on the road. It's in Marshall. Texas High kind of destroyed Marshall's district championship plans a season ago when Marshall went up there and lost. So there could be some revenge on the mind of the Mavericks. And I think this game is very important for Marshall because if it's able to get its win in the district opener, I think that can really turn around their season.
I think so. I look at this game. You look at Cade Pearson, who's a North Texas commitment and Texas High's quarterback, threw for about 1,600 yards on the nose the past 2 seasons, which included 1-round trips into the playoffs. And this year he's already got 1,100 yards and 2 really good receivers. Quan Hampton, obviously, is a Division I guy, and then Tavalance Hunt, who's a junior receiver for them. And that's the strong point of their offense this season, the passing game, which is different. You think of Texas High, you think of physical running backs.
Yep.
Ever since Ryan Mallett, anyway. Marshall has a really good defensive backfield. That's one thing we do know about them, particularly on one side of the field. You've got Cortez Hurd at cornerback and then Trey Macon at safety, and that's a really interesting matchup. I think that Marshall puts itself in best position to win this game if that backfield holds up and if they can get a little bit of pressure on Pearson. And they're a little bit bigger. They have a little bit more depth than other teams Texas High has faced and might have more success against the Texas High offensive line.
We move on to a couple of non-district games that catch our attention. Gilmer and Nacogdoches. The Buckeyes' last regular season loss came in Week 11 of 2013. A 23-game winning streak was snapped last week by Carthage. That means that Gilmer has not had to play in the regular season after a loss since Week 3 of the 2012 season. So it's been a while for Gilmer to have to go back to the grind during the middle of the regular season after a loss. Nacogdoches has played really well through 4 games.
That's right. It's a tough game to call. You've got Gilmer reeling a little bit. I've learned not to bet against Gilmer ever.
And that's a pretty safe bet.
But Nacogdoches has some real weapons to use against them. I really like Phillip Jones, and he's near the top of the charts in the rushing department this year. He's a really hard runner. I don't think Gilmer has seen anyone quite like him that can do it as relentlessly as he can. He's their primary weapon, and then they've got a good quarterback in Noah Hildebrand. He's a Division II commitment to Arkansas Monticello. They got some guys that can go toe-to-toe with Gilmer, I think.
And, the headlining matchup in this one, the one-on-one anyway, would be LaMarcus Morton, the Gilmer receiver, the Oklahoma State commit, against Texas commit, and Nacogdoches corner/safety Josh Thompson. Last week against Carthage, LaMarcus Morton really wasn't much of a factor. He was held to 5 catches for, I think, 55 yards, was held out of the end zone for the first time this season. And he's going to be going up against another tough Nacogdoches secondary this week. So it'll be interesting to see how Gilmer chooses to get Morton involved after last week. On to our game of the week. You will be there in Harmony, White Oak and Harmony, a battle of unbeatens, as this is each team's last non-district game of the season.
Really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a special night in Harmony. Looking forward to a sellout crowd. The two teams are very familiar with each other from district play. This year, Harmony dropped down to 3A Division II, so they thought it was a good matchup and scheduled it again anyway. I think that White Oak has won 7 of the past 8 games. This one's going to be tough for them, though. Like I said earlier, Harmony has kind of been building up for this season. They've got a 3-year starting quarterback. They've got a great athlete that's a 3-year starter, and they're only juniors. So, they got another year to go. Good offensive line, and I think offensive line versus White Oak's defensive front is going to be key because Harmony's got a very good offensive backfield. Spencer Seahorn. You've got Noel Holscher at fullback, and then you've got Mike Edmondson at running back, and that's a lot of problems for any opposing defense. And you got White Oak with a couple of guys that have beyond 40 tackles already, and a lot of tackles for negative yardage in the same span. So I look at it as unstoppable force versus immovable object. It's going to be fun to watch that particular battle.
We mentioned at the beginning of the show about how many points per game these two teams are averaging. White Oak's up near 49. Harmony's about 56. Could we see a shootout, or do you think that the defenses for either team will kind of, play to their strengths and kind of hold down the offenses?
I'd expect a shootout. White Oak scores with ease. Heath Hood is a great quarterback, and he's got some athletic receivers around him, and they're built to score fast. Harmony, I don't think, can score that fast. They prefer to run. They've got Spencer Seahorn, who's a really physical quarterback, and you could put him. You can give the ball to him, and he can move it. So I think that White Oak will score quickly. Harmony will score methodically, and the game's just going to come down to a couple of defensive stops in between those two offenses.
Well, looking forward to that one. It's our ETSN game of the week, White Oak against Harmony. Now on to our players of the week from last week. We want to give a special shout-out to Alto sophomore quarterback Fred Thacker, who is our offensive player of the week. In last week's thrilling win over Garrison, he ran for 260 yards and 5 touchdowns, also threw for 124 yards and a touchdown. Alto scored with 26 seconds left and decided to go for the win, the 2-point conversion. They got it. They defeated Garrison 42-41, so congratulations to Alto quarterback Fred Thacker.
The defensive player of the week is White Oak safety Brandon Cook, the last line of defense in the upcoming Harmony game. He had 17 tackles last week, a 62-yard pick six, and they won by 1 possession against Dangerfield, 43-36, and they were down by 12 points at that game. So great job by Cook to give his team a chance to get back into it over and over again.
All right, so congratulations to Mr. Thacker and Mr. Cook, our offensive and defensive players of the week. That'll just about do it for this week's podcast. We want to give a big special shout out to Mix 93.1's Mandy Montana, who's been producing our show each week. She's awesome. Also, be sure to download the new ETSN.fm mobile app, available right now at the App Store. It's perfect for keeping track of all the scores from around East Texas on Friday nights. And if you like looking at pictures, and let's be honest, who doesn't? With Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, everyone's looking at pictures these days. If you're into that, be sure to visit ETSNpictures.com. That's where you'll find images from some of the best high school football games all season long. That's ETSNpictures.com. And of course, if you have any questions or comments for either Mike or I, you can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Clint Buckley. Mike is at Mike_ETSN. Or you can hit us up at the mothership at ETSN.fm. For Mike Graham, this is Clint Buckley wishing you all a very happy weekend, and we will talk again next week.